What do you see when you look at this image? Most people answer a pipe, but then we see printed underneath the pipe the phrase in the French language, "This is not a pipe." The title of this image is The Treachery of Images. The original was a painting by the Belgian artist René Magritte. Magritte created this image and then puts the phrase underneath, "This is not a pipe." What do you think the meaning was that Magritte was trying to convey here? Remember that the title of the painting, at least it was a painting when Magritte first designed it, is The Treachery of Images. So Magritte here is pointing out that what you're looking at here isn't a pipe, and the original viewer looking at it as Magritte would have displayed it would have seen not a pipe, but a painting of a pipe. What we're looking at is not even a painting of a pipe. What we're looking at is a digital recreation of a painting of a pipe. So it's that far removed from this original object that Magritte had kind of modeled for the original artwork. So what he's pointing out here again is that on an initial look, media is deceptive because we make the mistake of assuming automatically that the thing we are looking at, or rather the representation of the thing we are looking at, is the thing itself. A pipe. A pipe is a three-dimensional object that exists in space, and this type of pipe is one that is designed to put something inside of it and for somebody to smoke. This image here is not something that you can pack, and it's not something that you could light, and it's not something that you could smoke. It's a digital recreation of a painting of that object. Let's go to a more contemporary example. The French media theorist Jean Baudrillard thought that because of the kind of proliferation of images that we have in our society and the level of saturation of media, that we've kind of lost all access to what's real.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
So if we go back to what Magritte was pointing out, he was showing that in some way there was a kind of mental mistake people made when they looked at an image, that they would make the error of equating the image with a real object. What Jean Baudrillard started to see happening was that because we live in a media-saturated society, we've lost all access to anything that's real, and we're trapped kind of in this, this system of representation and images. In the film The Matrix, the character Neo has this book, and it's no coincidence that it's titled Simulations and Simulacra. That's the title of Baudrillard's book about this topic. And when Neo opens the book, what do we find out? That it is not a book at all. Rather, it is the shell of a book where he's hidden a bunch of computer objects and things used to go into the matrix, or rather, in this part, to go into the code, right? The thing behind everything that's running the world and the images that he encounters that turns out to be a completely false reality. And so, thinking about those things, we should start to think about that what we're looking at when we're looking at a film or a video or a painting or a photograph, that we're not seeing what is represented. We are always in the realm of representation. We are always looking at a representation and not the thing. And they are very different. Now let's go back to this image that Magritte painted, or rather, this digital recreation of a painting that Magritte made. It's a pipe. But is there any connection between the sound we make, pipe, and the actual object that's here? Because depending on the context and what is associated with that sound, pipe, we might kind of have a completely different idea of what pipe means. For example, look at this. When I say the word pipe, someone might conjure up the image of what Magritte has given us here, or they might come up with this thing, which is a tube used to move water. Then we have this one that's actually labeled with where it was made. Does that actually, that label there, mean anything? Why is it there? Would this device, this pipe, be different? Would it do something different if this text that was on there wasn't on there? We might say in the first part that the text that's on there provides some sort of direction as to how to use this object. But what about this? Does its place of origin have anything to do with the function of this particular pipe? Would it not transport water if it did not have this? So here we have this seemingly neutral object or tool or whatever you want to call this representation of this pipe, but there's an added piece to it here, an added image element, where it says made in the USA and a barcode on it. Now, we can now use this pipe as something we could also interpret. Why was this printed on there? What relevance does this actually have? And in what context does this text have any sort of relevance? So at this point, our image here of a piece of pipe suddenly becomes something that's actually political. If we look a little bit further at it, we find this: temperature not to exceed 140 degrees. Now, this might not have the same kind of political context, but maybe it does if we think about it. When you look at this at first, you might say, well, all of this is saying is a safety measure. But if we look a little bit closer and think about this a little bit further, we realize that 140 degrees is in this Fahrenheit scale and that the language is English. Right? So this object is in a very particular context. We can tell from looking at this object that it's geared towards someone who reads English and uses the Fahrenheit temperature scale to measure water temperature or gas temperature. So even with this warning on here, we can actually take this image of a pipe, this type of pipe, and read a little bit more into what the image might actually be with a little bit of analysis, or what this image might actually mean to someone. What about this? Here again, we have that same sound. We make the same sound, pipe. And when one makes that sound, you might think of what Magritte said. Magritte made his painting around a century ago, so would somebody that even smokes something in a pipe necessarily think of that particular pipe that Magritte has painted? Somebody else might conjure up this image when somebody says the word pipe. And this image here, what does it mean to you when you see it? Is it something that you understand is a way of moving water? That might be the case if you're a plumber or you've just recently had to fix your sink. But what if you work in a different field? Say, what if you are a trader of valuable metals? This image might signify money to you. And thus, when somebody says the word pipe, it might not actually even conjure up an image of something that moves water or gas, but rather somebody sees it as a statement that implies a certain value. If we put this image of this type of pipe, or the multiple pipes here, it has a little bit more context, and we can kind of tell from the way that I've cut this off that it's underneath of a sink. Now, in this context, the word pipe means something else, right? We see the pipes and it is connected to something, presumably a sink in this case. But what does it mean for somebody who has never had running water or lacks running water to see this thing? Would they know what this means in every part of the world? Or is this part of a particular context of this image too? So when we say the word pipe, again, maybe it is this, maybe it is Magritte's, maybe it's the other pipe. It depends. It's largely dependent on the context, both of the way that you're looking at the image and the cultural context of the image. If we say the word pipe to somebody who is not a native speaker of English, that doesn't have any knowledge of the English language, what would the sound pipe even mean? It probably wouldn't conjure any particular image unless the language that we are talking about also has association with that sound that would cause somebody to associate it with a particular image. So let me go back to Magritte. Magritte uses this contradictory image a pipe that tells you that it is not a pipe, to bring out something about this image of a pipe, that we easily might mistake the image for the pipe for the real thing. And we should be careful when we're looking at the world to not make these types of mistakes, to become conscious of the fact that we're looking at images and not the real thing.